Hello and welcome to this continuing First Look Exploring session looking at The Guardian by Abraham Cowley. We're halfway through, a third of the way through rather, we're about to get past the halfway mark during this session. It's intriguing us. There's a lot of really good dialogue. There's a lot of stuff where you feel you might need some footnotes because of the depth of the cultural milieu that is going on here. It's 1641. This is being performed before the king, and the king, 6 months' time, may not be quite so politically central. So it's very much of that time. It's full of cultural reference points. It's full of references to songs and bits and pieces like that. So there's an interesting question of what really lands for us and what sometimes gets a little obscure. But the dialogue is pithy and bouncy and does interesting things with often really horrible people. Talking of really horrible people, reading Blade, the character, not the person who's reading it. I should just clarify for this way that sentence went. Reading the horrible person Blade is
Alan in Suffolk, twirling his pistachios.
Reading another slightly more problematic character. Reading Cutter is
Aliki in Athens.
Reading Dogrel is
Olga in Moscow.
Reading Puny is
Mark in the Midwest United States.
Reading Aurelia and a widow is
Sarah Blake in The Hague.
Reading Servant and Lucia is
Lynn, Salem, Oregon.
Reading Old Truman is
Sue, Covent Garden, London.
And reading Young Truman is
Hi, it's Greg up in Stratford-on-Avon.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions and any characters I've forgotten to give out. Suddenly I have a terrible worry that somebody should be reading Tabitha, but I haven't allocated the part, so I'm assuming that she doesn't say anything. That's the only other major character I don't think features this time. Anyway, let's dive into Act 3 of this play as performed at Cambridge, I seem to recall. Act 3, Scene 1. Enter Dogrel and Aurelia.
Not poisoned, you say?
No, he's as well as we.
Maybe he has more lives than one. Or used himself to poison, as we now that are scholars and poets read of one Mithridates.
He was never sick.
Yes, very hot.
Aye, as a painted fire, his fancy made him so. I smell a plot in it. Lucia, you say, urged him then for Truman? 'Twere a mere plot, I doubt, to put him in fear of death.
I shall be taken for a kind of frog, then, for bearing false witness.
You shall not be mistaken, sir, at all.
Pilloried and whipped with my godly brother Cutter.
Abused by the prentices as you walk in the streets and have rotten apples slung at you.
Of 100 blustering oaths am I no more believed than when I swear to my creditors I'll pay all.
Be abandoned by all men above a tapster, and not dare to look a gentleman in the face, unless perhaps you sneak into a playhouse at the 5th act.
If ever I have to do with women again, but in the way of all flesh, may I die a eunuch. I'll never lie or swear hereafter but for myself. Were not you the virtuous gentlewoman with the brown paper face that persuaded me to it?
The very same, sir, and I had just such another exploit here to employ thee in. Therefore, be secret, close as a cockle, my good rhymer.
To employ me in?
Nay, you must do it, i' faith. I have sworn first, Dogrel.
By this good light, I will do nothing at thy entreaty, not if thou shouldst entreat me to lie with thee. Must, poet Dogrel?
Aye, must, if he intend dare to drink sack again, or to make more use of his little pocket than to carry tavern bills in it. Must do it, unless he intend to die without a shirt and be buried without a winding sheet.
Like thy wit yet, wench. What is't?
I would marry Puny. He's rich, you know, and a bravery, and a wit.
He says himself he is so, but few are of his faith.
He dances too, and courteth the ladies.
Yes, in more postures than a dozen of bowlers.
But he's rich, Dogrel, and will be wise enough. When I have got him knighted, then I shall be a lady, Dogrel. Have a dozen of French tailors, doctors, jewellers, perfumers, tire women, to sit in consultation every morning. Oh, how I shall be dressed up to play at Gleek, or dance, or see a comedy, or go to the exchange in the afternoon. Send every day my gentleman to know how such a lady slept and dreamed, or whether her dog be yet in perfect health. Then have the young-smelling braveries all adore me, and cut their arms if I be pleased to be angry. Then keep my close and open coaches, my yellow satin pages, monkeys and women, or, as they call 'em, creatures.
Be then a politic lady, keep none but ugly ones. You'll ne'er be handsome else. But suppose all this, what's this to Dogrel?
Dogrel shall be maintained by me. He shall have fine new serge, and every day more wine than's drunk at a coronation.
This qualifies, and when the good knight's dicing, or at bowls, or gathering notes in private out of romances, might not Dogrel have a bit?
Yes, like enough your poetry might tempt some of my underwomen to it. But are you prepared to cheat in your own behalf and mine?
Aye, but how must this be done?
Why, thus briefly. First, read this letter.
Dearest Truman, we have long desired be contracted together, that nothing might be wanting to our loves but ceremony. Tonight about 9 o'clock I shall find opportunity to meet you at the garden door and let you in. Silence and help of veils will save the violating of your oath. Farewell, yours, Lucia Blade. In faith, was this her writing?
No, but the hand's as like hers as the left is to the right. This you shall show to Puny, and tell him that you found or stole it from Truman. I need not, I suppose, instruct you to polish over a lie. He knows their love, and cannot suspect anything. Persuade him to make use of the occasion, and come himself.
And you'll meet him where?
Hast thou found it out? Thou hast shrewd reaches, Dogrel.
I'll do it. Thou shalt be blessed. I'll do it, in faith.
About it, then. I'll leave you. And fail not, Dogrel. Remember, wine and serge. But first, I have another way to undo thee, Lucia, and that I'll try too.
Exit Aurelia.
Go thy ways, girl, for one, and that's for Puny, I hope. I see thou'lt ne'er return seamstress nor teach girls. Thou'dst be a rare wife for me. I should beget on thee Dons and Johnsons, but thou art too witty. We men that are witty know how to rule ourselves, can cheat with a safe conscience. 'Tis charity to help the Aurelia, and I'll do it, and merit.
Exit Dogrel. Yes, as we all know, Johnson is one of the greatest poets of the age, along with Donne. So, you know, Cowley obviously knows these things. We should always trust Dogrel's opinion. Okay, well, isn't this sliding things into place? We were talking, I think, last time about not being given all the information up front, that things happen without being told what's precisely going on. We've got plotting and internal plot and stuff the between these that explains what's going on and what's going to go forward. So as Greg's just put in the chat, very Middleton. It's a very Middletonian way of writing a play. Aurelia's. The promise of Aurelia has finally been reached. It's like she did this aside earlier. She did 6 lines where she went, she's done bugger all since. And then suddenly, there's a relationship with Dogrel. This is really interesting, the way this back and forth plays. Thoughts in the room on this about the plotting? and the characters. Any thoughts? Someone has some thoughts apart from me. Good, Susan.
Well, I just think it's incredibly exciting. It's like this writer is talking to us, because John Donne's love poems are probably the sexiest poems ever. And here is this man telling us he was famous for his love, because it's not just any old poems. They're about women. They're about women and girls and men. And, I think that's thrilling, because it's like he's just told us that he knows him. And his painting is just over the road here in Lincoln's Inn Fields, and in Lincoln's Inn. Anyway, I love John Donne. Can you guess?
Other thoughts in the room on Alan and then Sarah.
If I was Dogrel, I would not place any reliance on any promises out of Aurelia whatsoever.
Yeah, but I think that's why I think he's cognizant of that, and he's still interested. I think that's quite interesting, actually, because there is he's not as intelligent as she is, but I think he's intelligent enough to know that she's more intelligent than he is. If that makes sense, Sarah.
So mine is more of a question than a comment. So yesterday, I think it was Dogrel who was telling everybody, or specifically telling Blade, that Lucia and young Truman had been seen with the evil doctor, sort of, supposedly paying him to poison Blade. So are we to infer then that this was actually Aurelia's, even though it wasn't explicitly said? Are we to infer that this was Aurelia's plot and that actually that never happened?
Yes, it's all a plot.
Right. Okay.
and that Blade has been poisoned, and they're really disappointed that it hasn't come off. It's like, was he got a bit, was he not sick? No, he got a bit hot. It's just, he's taken so many poisons in his life, it hasn't worked.
But then why would Aurelia want to poison him?
Oh, because of the sort of general workings of getting Lucia out of favour and all of that stuff. It's all wibbly wobbly, plotty.
Because Blade's her father, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. So just to kind of set up her cousin, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Lynn.
I have a question too. I don't think she really. I wasn't following that closely, to tell you the truth. She doesn't really want to marry Puny, does she? Why is she saying that? What's going on?
I don't quite know, because I have to say I was doing some work at that point, so I did slightly lose the plot of what the plot is, but I think some of these the counter plots are possibly MacGuffins. We shall see. Aliki.
Well, I wasn't here yesterday, but she wants to mess up Aurelia, and maybe that's all it's about.
She is Aurelia.
Lucia.
Sorry, the other one, Lucia.
Yeah, but that Puny and Lucia don't have any kind of relationship, so I don't.
I think we may need to see how this plays out to fully understand what's going on. I have to say it's the beginning of a new session. I've slightly lost momentum, so let's pick up some more data, and I'm sure that will all come out in the wash. He said. Okay, Act 3, Scene 2. Enter young Truman alone.
Oh, our minds are like the sea, and every passion, like some fierce tempest stricken from the north, disturbs the peaceful calmness of our thoughts. Custom of anger drives us from ourselves. The Adriatic Gulf a milder fury hurries. Those waves touch heaven, but they rise to hell. Sometimes the winged whirlwind of blind avarice shoots itself forth and sweeps up all before it. Now we, with greedy hope, knock at the spheres, and anon the deadly hand of cold despair throws us beneath the grave. Amidst these dangers the flame of love appears instead of lightning, and with sad glory frights the night itself. Oh, 'tis a subtle fire, and kills but wounds not. Good God! What more than man can safely pass the billows, rocks, and monsters of this ocean, unless some power divine become his pilot? For then the winds would scatter, the waves shrink, and the outworn storm suffer itself a shipwreck.
Act 3, Scene 3. Enter Aurelia and a tailor to young Truman.
Thanks, good tailor. Now I'll only beg that I may buy your secrecy. Fare thee well, friend.
And then at the door.
Ah! I did but speak just now of heavenly powers, and my good angel enters. Oh, welcome, Lucia. I can scarce say so here, yet welcome heartily. You see how ill our honest plot succeeds. I see we must outweary fortune's anger, and I have armed myself for it.
She gives him a note and embraces him. He reads.
Oh, I have with much ado gotten to you and can stay with you tonight. Why should we defer our joys longer, since we are married in heart? The opportunity and impatience of such delays forced me to desire that which else my modesty would not suffer me. Oh, your desires. Oh, to your bed long wished for. Why, this is strange. Yours, Lucia. No. No, thou art not Lucia. If thou just, as thou sayest, love me, do not use that name.
She embraces and goes to kiss him.
The devil has changed thee. This is worse still. With much ado, tonight joy's longer opportunity.
Reads, then walks about the room, goes to the candle and burns the letter.
May all remembrance of thee perish with thee. Unhappy paper made of guilty linen, the menstruous relics of some lustful woman. Oh, thy very ashes here will not be innocent, but fly about and hurt some chaste men's eyes as they do.
Weeps.
Oh, thou that once wert Lucia. Thy soul is softer then, purer than swan's feathers, than thine own skin. Two whitest things that paper and thine own self that didst once defile. But now thou art blacker than the skin that covers thee, and that same gloomy shade not so much hides thy body's colour as it shows thy mind's.
She kneels.
Kneel not to me, fond woman, but to heaven, and prithee weep. Tears would wash cleaner Ethiops. Sorry. Wouldst thou have had me been mine own adulterer before my marriage too? Oh, wouldst thou have given me an earnest of the horns I was to wear? Is marriage only a parenthesis betwixt a maid and a wife? Oh, will they remain entire without it? Go, pray, go back, and leave me too, since thou hast left thyself when peace is made with heaven. 'Tis made with me.
Exit Aurelia.
What are these women made of? Sure we men ourselves some better mould. Their vows and oaths are like the poisonous spider's subtle net. Others dangerous to entrap and brokers soon. Their love, their faith, their selves enslaved to passion. Nothing's at their command except their tears, and we frail men whom such heat drops entice. Hereafter I will set myself at liberty, and live more free than is the air I breathe in. And when I sigh, henceforth it shall not be for love of one, but pity of all the sex.
Exit young Truman. Yes, a few. Slightly problematic. Bit of language there, but okay. So just for those, especially at the beginning of this session, also several people who weren't here yesterday. His love, Lucia, had spent an entire scene with a veil on for no readily apparent reason, and I was sort of going, why is this happening? And we were sort of talking about, it's probably so that in the future Aurelia can turn up in disguise as Lucia and mess up their relationship. And oh look, lo, it came to pass. So, and as ever, it gives off. It only works for two reasons. One, young Truman doesn't shut the fuck up, which is something that we have established he does, and you can play that for laughs, and I think it should be quite funny, done correctly. But also, just if when meeting your love, don't wear a veil all the time in this because you're just asking for this substitution thing. Have you never been to a play before? So you know how good early modern disguise is, but it's this little detail at the beginning that she comes in with a tailor. Thank you very much for the disguise, because of course the clothing that you'd be wearing would be a very big signifier, especially in women's dress. If you basically got a dress that looks exactly the same as the other one, plus a veil, that's actually not an implausible disguise. Putting on a hat is not a plausible disguise, but this is actually reasonably plausible. And there's all this sort of stuff, and he's sort of questioning what the letter's doing, and he does all this histrionic acting. Gives him a chance to have a laugh. The actor, that is, not the character. He's quite sad most of the time. Greg.
I actually felt sorry for him by the end of that. I mean, yes, I'm sorry I corpsed, but could see Rob's face when it came to the slightly problematic lines. But it was an interesting speech, and I think you're right. It's very interesting how Lucia has been set up with all that veil, and then suddenly that scene pays it off quite nicely. I think. But yeah, no, I love the letter and the backwards and forwards to it. It was quite a nice sort of scene. The comedy could come out there a lot.
Especially, he's a bit distracted because of, what's just gone down. He's just been given absolute, you're not going to marry Lucia. Oh my God, where am I? And then this stuff happens. So, it does actually make sense within the logic of the narrative. Alan.
I think it would probably make a heck of a lot more sense staged.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Aurelia has obviously got quite a lot of physical business in there to make up for the lack of lines.
And also, the stage, it would be helpful if you enter Aurelia dressed as Lucia. Would be a helpful stage direction there. That would be useful. I'm literally typing that in now.
and also
on my imaginary typewriter. There we go.
The tailor is leaving, so Taylor enters with Aurelia. Is it the door leaving, on the point of leaving?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's that will be something to decide in the at the door is a bit of a clue there as well. That maybe. Lynn.
It's just weird that, I mean, these are fairly detailed stage directions here, relatively speaking. He goes to the candle, he tears up the letter, all of that, but it doesn't say enter Aurelia dressed as Lucia. So it's just weird.
Yeah, this. I mean, to be fair, this play is a bit weird. It is doing some interesting things. Okay, we need to move on. We've got a lot of text to get through. Act 3, Scene 4. Enter Dogrel and Puny.
But how shall I represent this anthropophagus?
Only speak softly, lest she chance to know your voice.
I warrant you all whisper like wet wood in a justice's chimney at Christmas.
But of all things, take heed of too much wit. That's always dangerous, but especially now. Truman, is an honest, harmless fellow and is contented to speak sense.
I hang him. There's clotted cream in his head instead of brains. And no more of that, then will completely serve to fill the eye of a needle. But I shall ne'er abstain from these fine things, hyperboles and similitudes. My nature stands a tiptoe. Truman's got the cramp. His genius is like some gouty alderman's that sits in a chair. And I were in a Phalaris bowl, I think I should be witty.
Nay, I note. A man may as well keep apprentice from Moorfield on a holiday as you from your muses and conundrums. They are meat and drink to you.
No, my good bagpipe, they're meat and drink to you that feed by 'em.
I see you are ashamed of the muses, and I hope they're even with you. But so much for this. You'll find wine, I hope, when I have found you the wench.
Though thou wouldst drink cups bigger than Paul's steeple or the great bell at Westminster, thou shouldst have them. How long dost thou think has this knight worn her mourning gown, and looks like a funeral?
Indeed, she has many torches. Why, sure, 'tis just about the critical time which she appointed. You know your business. First break a piece of gold, profess before heaven and angels you take her for your wife, then give her half of it, and after that, somewhat as you understand me.
Will she be malleable, do you think? Shall I stamp Puny on her?
There's a metaphor indeed. It seems 'tis the fashion. You take your wife for gold. Hark, the door opens. Use your fortune well.
Exit Dogrel.
Now, if my Alcockadin be right, I'm sure I am made.
She opens the door and lets him in. Act 3, Scene 5. Enter Captain Bladen's servant.
Fox on 'em! They put me in a horrible fear, but I'm glad I'm so happily cheated. For all that, well, I must devise some horrible lie to justify my fears. Some trick must be thought upon to gull Truman. Oh, now, what news from Tripoli?
That news, my lord. Here's an army at the door to speak with you.
Who are they? Creditors? A merchant? A mercer? A scrivener? A tailor? A butcher? 6 cooks? A dozen of vintners and the rest? Ah, tell 'em I'm sick, taking physic, or else abroad. Hang 'em rogues. Come on, like quotidian agues on a man.
No, sir, 'tis old Master Truman, the widow, and her daughter, and Master Dogrel, and I know not who. There's a stock of 'em.
They are those I wished for. Let 'em in.
Exit servant.
Now, Signor Blade, if ever thou wouldst see the golden age of yore, this is the time.
Act 3, Scene 6. Enter to Blade, old Truman, widow, and Dogrel.
Oh, sir, my son has poisoned you, I see. There's no law yet, is there?
Master Truman?
True me no more than I true you. Come, Captain Blade. I know what you are, and so shall others too.
You'll hear me, sir, I hope.
And so shall you hear me, sir. I can be heard. I would you should know, in as good a place as this is, and before as good as you are, Captain Blade.
Well, first leave your raging, sir. Though you should roar like Tamerlane at the bull, 'twould do no good with me.
I, Tamerlane? I scorn him as much as you do for your ears. I'll have an action of slander against you, Captain. You shall not miscall me at your pleasure. Remember, you called me Jethro once before.
Widow. Sarah, I think you're the widow. Am I wrong?
Sorry, no, you're not. I've lost my place. Where?
Just before they whisper.
32.
Act 3, Scene 6.
They whisper. Oh, right. Sorry. I've got
it's a
line
random
blindness. It's right at the bottom of my page, and I'd missed it. Oh, the father! Little did I think I was to see you ever with these eyes again.
Pray, sir, hear me. The wrong I did you when you were last here came from distraction only, and not my will, and therefore deserves pardon. The business, if you please, I'll relate truly to you, and by what special providence I escaped the danger.
Well, sir, I'm not angry, but I'll not be called Tamerlane by any man.
On my faith, sir, it was antidote. I vomited out more than any whale could have done. Things of more colours than 20 rhetoricians were ever able to invent.
I shall teach my son to be a good boy.
No, good sir. I forgive him with all my heart. But for my niece, you remember, sir, the will my brother left? You were witness to it. For this, her disobedience, the means have fallen to me. Now, if you please to marry Master Richard to my daughter, Lucia's portion shall be all hers.
Thank you, good Captain Blade. I thank you for your love heartily. Pray, send for him. He shall do it presently. I thank you heartily for your love, good captain. He shall do it. He shall do it.
Calls his servant and sends for him.
What good luck was this that I spoke not to the widow for her daughter? How do you, widow? You are melancholy, methinks. You melancholy of faith, that you are.
Well, I praise God, sir, in better health than I deserve, vile wretch. I am glad to see our neighbour so recovered.
Aye, good man. He has had a dangerous time of it, that he has. A very dangerous time. His niece is a naughty wench, a scurvy girl. To repay him thus for all his care and trouble, he has been a father to her. Widow, what he has, to my knowledge he has, your father was an honest man, I'm sure on't.
Was he? Aye, as ever trod upon God's ground, peace be with him. Aye, and as loving a neighbour too.
We have drunk our half-pints of muscadel together many a morning. That we have.
My husband, too, was all in all with him. Hey-ho! I shall never forget how merry we were when we went with him to Mortlick in the Easter holy days, and we carried a shoulder of mutton with us and a fat pig, and he carried his bottle of wine down with him. I warrant you he loved a cup of wine as well as his brother. In a fair sort, I mean.
Widow, those days are gone. We shall never see those days again. I was a merry Greek too then, and would be danced and cut capers. But I was merry as the maids.
My daughter Tabitha was just 4-year-old then, come Lammastide.
Oh, Captain, I thought thou hadst been at Fribbers by this time, but 'tis no matter. 'Tis but an epit of flost, hank towards Madex tempor, and so let it pass.
So made one, i' faith.
Yes, but light.
I'm glad I did not die then. Oh, here they come. She's a good, handsome wench. 'Tis pity to cozen her. But who can help it? Everyone for himself, and God for us all.
Act 3, Scene 7. Enter two Blade Widow, Truman the elder, and Dogrel. Enter to them Truman the younger, and Lucia.
Welcome, kind niece. You see I live still. There were antidotes as well as poisons.
He has been a loving uncle to you, Mistress Lucia. He might have deserved better at your hands. You might had Master Truman, I warrant you, had you but held up your finger to him. He would not have seen you perish, Mistress Lucia. I may say I know him so far. Speak, Mistress Lucia. Speak for yourself, good chuck. Your uncle will forgive you. We'll all speak for you. He shall forgive you, that he shall. He knows we all have our faults.
I understand the language of her silence. It's strong and good. You bound your son, sir, to an oath never to see nor hear her without your commission. 'Tis that troubles her conscience. She has a tender one.
Bound 'em? Well, I absolve them then. That's what's that to you, sir? I'll bind 'em again, if it be my pleasure so. If not, a fig for you. That's all I care. I love to speak my mind. You must pardon me. I have spoke to as good as you in my days.
Do you speak thus always? I'll hear you in a play if you do.
I'm glad you're so religious, sir. Did I bind you to silence? Go to, sir. I told you that your maybes would bring you to. You'll always be wiser than your father. Nay, you may speak. And your minion too, if she pleases.
Lucia pulls off her veil.
Does any man accuse me of anything?
We and your conscience do.
My conscience. 'Tis as pure as Scythian crystal from any spot. I can see through it at pleasure. Whatever crime you mean, for yet I know not, would it were written on my face.
That'd be blacker than a moor if 'twere. Did you not consent with that damned physician to give me poison?
There was none given you, I call God to witness. If such a thought had slipped into my dream, the horror would have waked me, and I feared ever to sleep again. No, what we did, sir, was but to fright you with a painted danger, that the just terror of your own destruction might call to your remembrance my dead father. For sure, sir, you forgot him when you thought to match his only child with one of these fellows that live extempore, whose fortunes are patched up like their wit by several patrons. Should I have married thus, but I would sooner endure the shameful end which they deserve, your conscious ghost would start to meet my father's, and look more pale than death itself had made it.
Let her alone. She'll call names and fling stones about and on.
Error.
Widow, yes. Alas, poor soul. You're muted at the moment. Just before the end of Act 3, Scene 7. Just before Act 3, Scene 8.
Oh, there. Alas, poor soul. You may see she's not her own woman.
What a poor excuse she made. A very idle, simple excuse. Have you never a better for us?
No, she says true.
You would bite off my nose, would ye, sir? Pray, do not bite off my nose. I pray, sir, do not.
Act 3, Scene 8. Enter to all the lot over on Puny.
Ah, what a bevy of men's here. Ah, my little lodestone. Art thou here, my little diamond? I'll speak to your uncle now. We'll have a parson cry in Nicholas presently.
You're rude, sir. What do you mean?
Aye, so you said in the garden when I began to gather you-know-what fruit. Come, put on your veil, you'll blush else, and look like the picture of a red rose in the hangings. Captain, salve, 'tis done.
Yeah, what?
I have her, i'faith.
God give you joy, sir.
Nay, she's my own.
I'm very glad of it.
I scaled the walls, entered the town, and left a garrison there, I hope.
I congratulate your victory, Master Puny.
You shall go to my wedding with me in this fair chorus. I'm as nimble as a Libyan rabbit. Come, you must go, though you be as lame as a cripple that begs at Westminster, or a crow in a gutter without her right leg. What do you wonder at? I tell you, she's my Penelope now.
May I be so bold, sir, as to ask who 'tis you mean?
Slid, canst thou not see my meaning? Are your brains in a litter? I'm contracted to your niece, and have got upon her. Nay, never blush. We're as good as married, my dear agate.
Have you then lain with her?
No figures nor similitudes, good Master Puny, being as open and as naked with me as you were with her.
As plain as a scholar's mourning cloak. I have done it, in faith. But do you see, we broke this gold between us first, and we'll be married today. Who's that? Truman! He looks like the globe of the world now. Look how he scratcheth his poll.
God give you joy, sir. She has not a farthing portion.
How, Captain?
Not so much as will buy ribbons. All's mine own. A lawful prize, i'faith.
Oh, monster of her sex.
Oh, vile man, I cannot speak to him. Witness all these.
Weeps.
So 'tis all forfeited to me. Will you try how your son's affection stands towards Aurelia?
You're muted, old Truman. Susan, you're muted.
So sorry. I was having a lovely time. Come, Dick. Sorry. Oh, we're all corpsing today. Come, Dick. The captain has forgiven you. Never think of Lucia. She's not worth your thinking on. A scurvy girl. Ne'er think of her. Thou shalt marry fair Aurelia. There's a wench worth gold, i'faith.
I can't marry.
What can't you do, sir?
I can't marry.
Do you know who 'tis you speak to, sir? You don't, sure. Who am I, pray? You can't when I bid you. Surely you know not who 'tis you speak to. You shall do it, and I'll know why you shall not.
I won't marry.
Get you out of my sight. Come within my doors no more. Not within my doors, sir.
Take heed, Master Truman, what you do.
I won't marry.
Pray, hear me all.
Come, Master Truman, let's talk of these things within. Come, gentlemen.
Widow?
Hey-ho! I'll never trust a wart or the right cheek and a twinkling eye again whilst I breathe, for Mistress Lucia's sake. A man would think that sees her the butter would not have melted in her mouth. Oh, take heed, Tabitha. The still sow eats up all the draff I see.
I'll never acknowledge him for my son again. I tell you, Captain, he's always thus. He's always with his maybes and his would-nots. I can't abide those words, not abide 'em.
I'll follow him about my portion. He shall not think to make an Asdrubal of me.
Now my plot works.
Everybody exits apart from young Truman and Lucia as we go into Act 3, Scene 9, Lucia weeping.
How precious were those tears if they were true ones. How much more worth than all the ocean's jewels. But they are only false and empty bubbles, fair to the sight, but as hollow as her heart. There's nothing in 'em. He that weighs 'em shall find 'em lighter than a madman's dreams or women's resolutions.
I never did that fellow any wrong. Why should he pay so dearly for the loss of my poor honor as sell his soul for it?
Oh, she confesses now. She has lost her honor.
They triumph in the ruin of us women and woo our beauties only, or our dowries, which when they miss, they resolve to take revenge on their unworthiness on us, stealing away all that makes rich our dowry and beauty fair, our name. But 'tis no matter, since heaven and Truman know my chastity. Huh, he's still here. How do you, sir?
Well.
You look ill.
No.
Oh, indeed you do. You are not well, I'm sure.
I am. Will you be gone?
How, sir? You do not know me, sure.
I would I never had.
What do you mean?
To see thy face no more.
You said you could not live without the sight on it.
It was a good one. Then.
Has one day spoilt it?
Oh, yes, more than 100 years of time, made as much more by continual sorrow that e'er ha done.
I do not think my glass will say so.
That's a false as you, perhaps. It is not half so brittle. Does your husband trust me alone with you so long?
My husband?
I cry you mercy. The man you sin withal. You scorn to use pretenses.
Yes, I do, sir. For she that scorns the offense needs no excuse. Have you so little confidence in that which you have seemed to praise so oft, my virtues? Or did you flatter only? Sure you did not, for I remember I have heard you swear you spoke your thoughts. Sorry. Our oaths, but compliments. 'Tis done unkindly, very unkindly, Truman. And were it not yourself, I should be angry.
Do you want to pause?
I think I can read. Had a bright angel come to me and said that you were false. I should have sworn it had lied. I thought that rather false than you. Nothing could ever move me in the opinion of thy constancy but thy own self. And thee I must believe.
And I'll believe myself in what I saw. I know thou canst speak prettily. But thy words are not what nature meant 'em, thy mind's picture. The bee has left his honey in thy tongue, but in thy heart his sting.
Do not say so. My heart is honest still, unless thou spoilst it. When it received thee in, it had but 3 corners, and now thou hast 2 at least. Wouldst thou could see how little room I've left myself there in it.
Yes, for 'tis crowded up with many guests. So many guests that they excluded me, and now I freeze without, but never more, never will I enter. 'Twas a palace once, but now 'tis turned a dungeon.
Will you believe me? I will call you fickle nor unconstant, but sure you are to blame. You will not find a woman that will love you half so well.
I do not mean to try.
Yes, prithee do. But when you have talked and loved and vowed and sworn a little while, take heed of using her as you do me. No, may your love to her be such as mine to you. It can't be better, whate'er you think. I'm sure it cannot, Truman. May she be worthy of your bed than I, and bring forth many little selves to you. And when the happy course of divers years makes you seem old to all besides your wife, may you in the fair glass of your blessed issue see your own youth again. But I would have them true in their loves, and kill no innocent maids. For me it is no matter. When I'm dead, my busy soul shall flutter still about you. 'Twill not be else in heaven. It shall watch over your sleeps, and drive away all dreams that fly not with a soft and downy wing. If any dangers threaten, it shall beckon and call your spirit away till they be past, and be more diligent than your guardian angel, only sometimes, when your best leisure serves, for I'd not trouble you more dead than living, bestow one thought on Lucia, and then sigh, and, if you will, drop down a tear or 2. But that's a task I'll not enjoin you to. If you do it, spend not too many on me. 1 will suffice. Then only say, that maid deserved more of me. And again to your business. For my wronged virtue and forsaken truth, I ask no more. So, dear false man, farewell.
Exit Lucia.
Farewell. That word has charms and poisons in it. It makes my frighted soul start back and tremble. It is but an airy word. Do you hear me, Lucia?
Who calls?
Farewell, Lucia, farewell. That's all. Farewell, repent, and meet me in heaven. Why did rash nature quarrel with herself, making one so excellently bad? She is more fair than May's new painted blossoms, but falser than the smiles of faithless April. And this I know, and yet methinks I love her. Oh, she has killed my reason. I have lost that of myself forever.
Well, we can only hope. Exit young Truman. So there's a lot going on here. I thought I'd give that sequence of things a bit of air. It's fascinating how enjoyable it is when some really horrible people do something horrible, because it's just the way he tells it. But it's really interesting what is actually happening here. We have a lot of stuff with the widow and old Truman and people just sort of having a bit of a natter, bit of scene setting, and character work. And then we get to the nub of everything with Lucia and the veil again, and yeah, Puny comes in and is awful. But he is as nimble as a Libyan rabbit, so that it was the one, a crow in a gutter without her right leg, of which I'm utterly bemused. It's a brilliant line. I've just no idea what it's supposed to actually really mean. In terms of it sort of means something, but it doesn't. Anyway, so there's lots of things in there that are really interesting dramatically, and again, we've talked many a time about how this kind of honor being lost in the early modern period is something you can't really walk away from. The scene with young Truman is something really interesting there, and Lucia's response is really interesting there as well. So thoughts from the room, because there's quite a lot to take in there. I'll go to Alan first.
Yeah, I mean, there do seem to be quite a lot of word games going on with this, of people using words which are not necessarily in context. I mean, there was a discussion in the chat about the Asdrubal lie, and one or two characters have been rather given to throwing in classical references which don't actually seem to have got any connection other than, oh, it's a showy-offy bit because I know this word that not many people will.
Aliki.
I think it's a pun. Asdrubal was in the Punic Wars. It's puny. Punic.
Ah.
Mm. Yeah, there is this stuff going on. Other thoughts in the room? Lynn.
Yeah, and speaking of word games and definitions and stuff, we've talked before about the early modern conception of honor, and is it an internal thing or is it an external thing? And there's a moment where we play with that a little when she says her honor's lost, and he's like, haha, her honor's lost. She means her reputation, what everybody else thinks of her. And that's actually the important thing. Perception is everything. Her ability to function in society is badly undermined when her own boyfriend doesn't believe her that Puny's lying and she's never done anything wrong. So yeah, that I just kind of wanted to point that out. Like, what is honor? And she still has her honor as an internal quality, but that doesn't really matter in terms of her life.
Yeah, and I thought one of the most telling lines for Lucia in the scene with Puny is the fact that actually she says, "Pray hear me all, dash," and then she's cut off immediately. She only actually gets the chance to really respond after it's all over. And she's left with Truman, who doesn't believe her, and she basically says, "Well, you go off and live your life then. You're not gonna, who are you gonna? It's yeah." I thought her final speech to him was really strong and really interesting. Just, you live your life and you'll marry someone, they'll be fine. I'm sure
you'll live happily ever after. Think about me sometimes. But,
well, I'm not. It was not even that. It's just this sort of sense of actually, what are you really giving up here, Alan?
I think actually the beginning of that last mini sequence, the bit with just the two of them on stage, the two of them are on opposite sides of the stage. So
it's all the sides. Yes. Yeah, she's talking to the audience.
They only interact about halfway through.
Yeah, Lucia's aside is overheard at one point, but it's not directed at him. Yeah, Aliki.
I have to say, after that speech, I'm sort of enjoying this. I mean, apart from random racism for no reason, it's really quite playful and takes pleasure in language and says so in a way that I'm enjoying.
And Lucia does have a voice. I mean, this is the thing. Yeah. The men in the context of the scene, in the context of that society, cut her off, but the play doesn't, actually. She's probably going to end up marrying Truman at the end, and that's going to be terribly disappointing. But she has actually got... It's not like she's just disappeared and not said anything, which, does happen. Not infrequently in these plays, and gives the actor something to play as well, which is not to be sneezed at. Okay, and Dogrel, all the way through that scene as well, that previous scene, Dogrel just constantly just throwing little lies here, just peppering, keeping the plot. And we asked earlier in the chat was who is the she in the exit with Puny, and of course that is obviously Aurelia. It was pretty much certain it was Aurelia, but the stage direction wasn't actually very clear, and it's useful to have very clear stage directions. In disguise with her veil on. etc., etc. Early modern. It was dark. Logic. Okay, anything. That was Act 3. Quite a dramatic close. I'm assuming candles get trimmed. Act 4, Scene 1. Having had a moment, enter Lucia alone.
Everything now has left me. Tears themselves, the riches of my very grief, forsake me. Sorrow, methinks, shows nakedly without them. My sighs are spent too, and my wearied lungs deny me fresh supplies. And I appear even like some dull, melancholy April even, when after many a shower the heavens still lower, as if they threatened more. And the sacred sun leaves nothing but a doubtful blush behind him. And I could wish my eternal night were coming, did I but know who 'tis that makes me wish it. Else when my soul is ready for her slight, and knows not who it is she must forgive, 1,000 light suspicions will call her charity several ways, and I may chance to doubt thee, Truman. But thou art abused, I know not why, but sure thou couldst not do it. I fear thee, cousin. When we were both girls, thou wouldst accuse me falsely to my mistress, and laugh to see my tears. I fear thee, cousin, but I'll not judge too rashly, for I would not have innocent wronged, as I have been, but I am resolved to try her. She's now seeking, hoping that all my fortunes now are hers, for a new maid to attend her. That maid I'll be. Clothes I have got already, and my face grief has disguised. That and my voice some art will quickly alter. I have left a note upon my chamber window, which will keep them from all suspicion of my staying here.
Aha! Early modern disguise. We'll let the scene run on. But hey, at least they've gone through the logic of they definitely won't recognise me because I'm very sad, and that has changed how I look. Act 4, Scene 2. Enter Cutter, Dogrel, and Puny to Lucia.
Hey, the sisters are ravished, and we have holy kisses enough. I shall be as great among them as... Who's there? What, your spouse, Puny?
It looks like Niobe on the mountain's top.
Niobe, Dogrel, you have used worse than Phoebus did. But a dog looks melancholy, but he's compared to Niobe. He beat a villainous tapster the other day to make him look like Niobe.
Why, Faith, that's pretty odd, like one of mine.
Oh, sir, had you the virtuous impudence to slander a poor maid thus?
Poor enough now, indeed. I will not marry thee. Thy portion was a condition of the contract. I'll sooner marry a woman that sells oranges with a face like Billingsgate.
I scorn thee. I contracted to thee.
Were not. Answer.
No, by heaven.
Bear witness, gentlemen, these words are Catus Benedictus to me.
And what will you do, fair Gammer Lucia, you that condemned the colonel? Will you knit for your living?
Or else weed gardens for 6 pence a day and bread.
This is unheard of rudeness.
Nay, let me have mine too. I gotta pat one for her. Or else turn apple woman. Live in a stall and sell pippins for 8 a penny.
Or hither in tribe 'twixt 2 pennies ride, and sell the bowls of wheat and butter in Cheapside. The last is a little too long, but I imitate Spencer.
What think ye, gentlemen? She'll make a pretty laundress.
A laundress? Hang her. She looks like a foul handkerchief.
Pray let me go. I have business requires me.
What? You're to meet some gentleman? How is't? 12 pence a time, I warrant, and those clothes.
Where do you sit up? Nay, we are true strikers. What? Isn't in Covent Garden?
Or do you renew the decayed credit of Turnbull Street?
Or honor the Millbank at Westminster.
Or flee to Wapping and engross the sailors?
Or Moorfields and sell cakes?
Are all barbarous here?
Nay, tell's. We shall be customers.
Enough. Give her a clap of the breech and let her go.
Well, fare thee well, girl. We shall find you at the playhouse in the sixpenny room sometimes.
And you hear, Lucia? Keep yourself wholesome. Your tub's a terrible thing.
Unworthy villains, but I'm born to wrongs and must endure them.
Exit Lucia.
A pretty scene, in faith. Now for the captain. He'll entertain us like foreign princes. We'll drink this half year with him before we eat or sleep.
I'll drink like Gog Magog himself, or the Spanish tinker on a holy day.
There will I wet my lyric muse with Fallon wine as I do use. Captain Blade cannot refuse to entertain us. He cannot choose when we bring him such good news as that his niece is gone to the stews.
Save your verses, Dogrel. I hate your verses, Dogrel, till I be drunk. The glorious captain.
As Freetown in Germany, here comes Geronimo.
Act 4, Scene 3, enter to them Blade.
The story says my niece has run away. The story is not bad. Now will I get the widow, turn off my old rascally companions, and live like an emperor.
He says he'll live like an emperor. A brave captain.
Invincible Captain Priam.
Hey,
Hey, brave Captain.
Captain!
What do you mean, gentlemen? You broke loose from Bedlam? Here no other place to play your tricks in but at my door? If you come here as mummers, much may be done. Haply you may have 12 pence, or else depart if you be wise.
Why, how now, Captain?
If you be not gone immediately, I'll have my men switch you further off. You're a saucy knaves indeed, with all my heart.
Offers to go out.
Why, this like the captain's drunk without us.
Prithee, Captain, thou art as humorous as a bell rope. Dost thou know me, man? I'm Master Puny.
You're a fool, an addle egg. There's nothing else but cobwebs in your head. The height of all thy knowledge is to find out the quarter day against thy rents come in, and thou couldst not find that if 'twere not marked in the almanac with red letters. Yet you, forsooth, because you see some gentlemen and poets of late, a little extravagant sometimes in their similitudes, because they make a pretty kind of sound to those that mark 'em not. Make that your way of wit, and never speak without comparisons. Never were comparisons so odious as thine are, and these two rabbit suckers for a quart of wine extol thee, and cry good when thou speakest so.
The captain's raging mad like a baker when his oven is overheated.
And that was one of 'em.
Come, leave your humours. Hang you. Confound you, pox take you. Captain, we come to drink here.
Mine's no blind alehouse where you may roar and swagger with half a pipe of tobacco in your mouth.
Do you know me, Captain?
I would I never had. Thou art one that says thou hast seen the wars, that I liest basely. For if thou ever wast in a battle, I'm sure thou winkest there. Thou art one that lives like a raven by providence and rapine. One that if thou shouldst chance to go to bed sober, thou wouldst put it down in thy almanac for an unlucky day. Sleep is not a death's image with thee, unless thou beest dead drunk.
He dares not abuse me thus.
Is it even so, Captain? Has your money exalted you?
No, it has humbled me, and made me know myself and you, whom I shall study to forget hereafter.
Come, Captain, shall you and I drink hand to hand?
Oh, you're his Lausprasado, Sir Trundle.
Let not thy wrath swell like the Adrian Sea.
Thou that troubles thyself to be a fool, I will so beat thee, Trundle. Thou shalt hobble like one of thine own rhymes. Therefore, if ever thou showest that poetical face of thine within my doors again, I'll use thee worse than thou didst me, when thou hadst an ode in commendation of me.
Then break thine ode and read.
Fare ye well, gentlemen. I shall see thee, Cutter, a brave tapster shortly. Must be so, i' faith. Cutter, thou must like Bolgadolf in the play, the spigot wield. Dogrel shall make and sell small pamphlets in the playhouse, or else tobacco, or else snuff candles. As for Puny, his means will serve him to be cheated of these 5 or 6 years.
It's very well. The times are altered.
You cannot want a living gentleman, as long as there are whores, bowling alleys, or ordinaries, especially such able men as you are. There will be wars too shortly, never quake, Cutter. Here's Dogrel, when his want has spun him out a little thinner, will serve you for a pike.
It's very well. Pray God your mirth last, Captain.
When you've grown old and your fingers then only nimble with the palsy, I'll provide an hospital for you, so these will be for tests. Fare ye well, gallants. Pray be merry. Fare ye well, heartily.
And exit Blade.
Poverty, the pox, and an ill wife, and the devil go with thee, Captain.
I vexed him when I put that jest upon him, like a baker when his oven's overheated.
If I don't compose a satire, I shall make him hang himself. May I never write verse more.
I would beat him like a buck, but I shall be bound to the peace for it and be affronted afterwards by everyone.
No, let me see. Besides my satire, I have another way. Let me see. His brother trafficked at Guinea.
Yes, but the merchants there report him dead.
The more knaves they, he lives. And I am he.
How? Dogrel, thou, the merchant man?
By this light, I either am or will be.
How, Dogrel, though thou be as thin and penetrable as a spirit, yet thou canst not assume dead bodies.
Prithee, Dogrel, hold thy peace. Thou talkst like a hog's face.
Deride not, Puny, if I be not more like than any of your similitudes, I'll be hanged for it.
Thy face indeed will do exceeding well to represent one risen from the grave.
By long conversation with the captain, I know all the passages between him and his brother, know what his humour, what his state and fortunes were, better than himself did when he lived.
But they'll never act him. Why, man, he was a thing more strange than any monster in Africa where he travelled.
What was he, prithee?
I knew him well enough. He had lost his memory, and therefore either read down everything and took his business with him in a scroll, or else trusted it to his man John, whom he carried with him.
Oh, aye, that John and he went perpetually together, like the blind man and his dog.
Or a tinker and his troll. But do you hear, gallants? Let me do Apple John. Never was such a John as I'll be, not John a Gaunt himself, nor John a Nook.
But Dogrel, how wilt thou made like that sank water?
Why, we poets can do anything. First, you may remember, unless you be like him, 'tis 7 years since he went from hence, and time, you know, will alter man. I made an ode upon that subject once, a time that dost eat and makes no land.
Hogstake your ode! Go on your business, Dogrel.
Then I and my man John, as simply as he stands here, will swatter over our faces as if the country had made us so. For if you remember my verses, in Afric they are black as coal.
The devil's in thy verses. Prithee, on.
Besides, we'll be attired in some strange habit of those countries. I know not how, but you shall see it in Speed maps.
Why, now I like thee, my little Ovid. About thy metamorphosis. I'm for Tabitha. She's taken, Dogrel, melted like virgin's wax. I'll to her presently and tell her that the vision appeared to me last and warned me to carry her to St. Whatsits. There will I have a priest.
A priest, Cutter?
A minister, I mean, a holy, godly, zealous minister, and she, you conceive me, Dogrel?
Well, let's be going then. Puny, take heed of your wit when you act, John. I shall beat my servant John if he be witty.
That's the devil. I shall hardly abstain.
And Dogrel, you must make no verses, Dogrel. Let that be the first thing your memory fails you in.
Well, I'll follow you in a pissing while.
Do so, good John.
And exit Dogrel and Cutter.
Now will I turn John as round as a wedding ring, and if that plot be cut off by the nose, huh? Here comes sententious bias that walks gravely. I'll observe my young Laconian.
And we'll pause there because slightly. Well, there's two things. One, did anything happen in the last 15 minutes of text? It felt like they were almost plotting something that's really problematic and worrying, but it wasn't actually clear if that actually was a thing or whether they were just wittering. I don't really know, but it looks like, hey, we might black up for fun. That could be a thing. I'm really unclear what's going on there. But otherwise, they just seem to be turning on the captain a bit, and not a lot really happened. There was, and again, even with the Lucia scene, I will with the three gallants, I wasn't really clear whether they knew who she was, because there were bits where it felt like they did, and then there were bits where it felt like they didn't. It's very interesting social commentary stuff. I found that scene with Lucia, Puny, Cutter, and Dogrel really interesting because we were getting a sense of the way sex work functions. But I don't have. The act started so well. I'm going to go in disguise as a maid and stuff, and then blah happened. Aliki, then Alan, then Susan.
See, I really think all of that happened. I think they knew exactly who she was, and they were mocking her by projecting her future as a sex worker now that nobody will want to marry her since she's dishonored and has no money. And then they decided that they were going to get back at the captain who had scorned him by disguising themselves as the brother and his presumably African servant. I took that all straight up as the next disguise plot being set up.
And it was going so well. Alan, then Susan, then Lynn.
Very much the way Aliki's just summarised it. But what did strike me was the whole thing has suddenly become very much more London.
Oh no, it's always been. I mean, they're constantly talking about Moorfields and various locations. It all the way through the play. I mean, I think we've had Moorfields 4 times now, at least. So it's very London centric all the way through. Actually, I think it's just we've just hit another moment where we've really gone into the detail of it. I say, on a social history front, this is fascinating. There's so much really interesting stuff. It's just, not sure I'm happy where the plot is currently going. Susan, then Lynn.
I think it might be a rhythm thing slightly, because this final scene that we've just read gave me a bit of a headache. Yes, there's a lot to take in there. But I think the one with Blade and the guys needs to really trip along. And I don't think it needs to be taken quite so seriously and viciously. I think it's all about showmanship for each other, those men. And I think if that was lighter, then this more complicated plot bit, which almost feels like it's written by someone else, actually, but might be more understandable.
Yeah, and again, this is where we're looking at cuts. I mean, there's an awful lot of people saying words rather than things moving stuff forward. And I don't have a problem with them having an attack at Blade and Blade attacking them. They're all horrible people. They can attack each other as much as they like. It's just it doesn't feel that it's advancing a lot, and then they do some plotting, and I'm just going, I don't like this plot. Please go away. Lynn.
Yeah, the scene where the men taunt Lucia, particularly if they know that Puny's lying, that's just sickening. That's just disgusting. It goes as far as I'm concerned. That's just so unnecessary. The only thing it serves is just to show what awful people they really are. And they may not. No, I don't really understand what's going on with Puny. He may actually genuinely believe that he had a tryst with her, and maybe it was Aurelia. I haven't been. I can't figure that out.
I don't think Puny knew.
Yeah, he's not lying. He's just incorrect.
He's just not. Yeah,
he just thought it was her, and it was probably Aurelia. Okay. But it just was so unnecessary. And I didn't catch that John was African. although Aliki may be right about that. My impression was that, because they've been out on shipboard and exposed to the sun, they're all tan. So they look all like tan and leathery from being exposed to the weather, rather than it being about race. I think that's a possible take on that. But yeah, I think that Dogrel is generally going to disguise himself as Blade's older brother and pretend to come back and want his money back.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, because I was making a note earlier, just going, right, we've got the end of our first half and we've got the beginning of the second half when she comes back and says she's going to go into disguise. I mean, I don't know whether it's wholly unnecessary. I found that scene actually fascinating and very dramatically viable. I mean, it's the question of actually how much this is a comedy and how much you then push the drama side of a comedy and whether you can pull that back again. And that's a big question in terms of tone, because how horrible do you go when you make can you pull any laughs back from that moment? That's the question. Aliki.
So I think on second read that Lynn is right. It's just that they're meant to be suntanned. I was confused by the in Afric versifying.
Yes.
But maybe that's all about sunlight and stuff. I mean, I agree that it's a horrific thing that they do to Lucia, but also I kind of don't mind it happening if they get a comeuppance in this play. If the whole point of it is to show us what terrible people they are.
Yes, and this is as ever we're hurtling towards the final session where the big question is, can they resolve the plot in a way that we will find acceptable? And will that be able to square that circle or circle that square, depending on your point of view? Mark.
Yeah, I think with the talking about disguising themselves, I think it's a bit of a collapsing of, there's a phrase, they're gonna swarthy over their faces as if the country had made them so, and then they talk about in Africa people being black. I think it's a bit of a collapsing of things, and I don't know. I've read things, heard things from some professors about just talking about the idea of blackness in early modern drama and like the way that like on stage they would use like the the way that they would put on blackface, like that naturally kind of spreads to other things and body parts and such. And so I think it's a bit of a collapsing of like, because they were in Africa and around these people, they're getting dark. I think that's kind of where that's coming from. Of course, what can you do with it today?
Oh, I think we can excise it. I mean, all they need to do is say that we're going to go into disguise. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's making a statement. The play obviously keeps bringing up race in various ways. It has done several times in overt and less overt ways. So there are questions to be done with that, but we're not. When we got to the end of that scene, I was going, oh, God, we're not into the English Moor territory here, are we? Please, dear God, no. I don't think that's where we're going, but, there's still time for us to be truly horrified, so gird your loins, everyone. We need to move on. Act 4, Scene 4. It's a continuation of the scene. Puny's still on, but he's going to have a little listen to what young Truman's... Because young Truman doesn't talk to people, he soliloquizes. So let's Puny aside probably over this for a little bit. I'm not sure precisely, because it's not properly marked.
She's gone forever. Peace be with thee, Lucia, wherever thou art.
Now he begins his epithalamium.
Sorry. If she be guilty, forgive her. Heaven shall repent, I'm sure. For she is soft and melting as the dew that kisses every morn the rambling roses, and howsoe'er beauty and youth misled her, she cannot be, I know, a stubborn sinner.
Did ever basket maker talk thus? To himself, too, like a conjurer in a garden.
Ha! This is he, that wicked man, that devil which betrayed her.
Are you thereabouts?
Offers to go out.
Nay, stay, for thou wert For wert thou armed with thunder and my anger, yet I would bring thee back. Tell me what charms, for I will rip thy heart up, but I'll know it. What witchcraft didst thou use to entice her thus? Never deny it. For hadst thou been more handsome than than other men's, or finer and flattery could ever make thee, hadst thou been as beautiful and couldst have spoke as well as she herself, all this were nothing. She would look upon thee, but lust no more than thine own angel does. No, thou didst use some cursed art to tempt her, some philter.
Not I, by all that. What do you mean, pray, sir?
Why then, you ravished her, by heaven, you ravished her. Alas, she's weak and tender, oh, very tender, and was not able to resist that strength which youth and furious lust did arm thee with. 'Twas basely done, above expression basely, and I would presently revenge it fully, but that my sword would take from the law's justice and from thy shame.
I ravish her. By this light I scorn it.
You did enjoy her body, did you not?
I did so.
You did? I pray thee did not. I pray thee do not say you did so. This is to brag of the vile acts that thou hast done. But I shall spoil your pride and shameful glory which your base sin affords you.
You bid me tell you the truth. What would you have me do?
Do? I would have thee fix thy adulterous eye upon the ground which thy cursed feet dishonor, and blush more red than is the sin thou hast uttered. What would I have thee do? I'd have thee weep, shed as true tears as she does for thy fault, and sigh away the body into air. What would I have thee do? I'd have thee kill thyself, and sacrifice thy life to her wronged soul. Canst thou refuse to do all this for her, whom thou hast damned thyself?
We were contracted first, ere I enjoyed her.
Huh? Didst thou enjoy her then? How dost thou do it? Why, she was mine, I tell thee, she was mine. All the sea's wealth should not have brought her from me, while she remained as spotless as my love, and so she did remain till thy sin stained her. I tell thee, to that hour she was more innocent than thou, false man, wert in thy mother's womb. Oh, didst thou enjoy her? Either fetch back that word, say nay, I'll have thee swear thou didst not touch her, or by those joys which thou hast robbed me of, I'll kill thee straight.
Slade, I did not touch her. What would you have me say? Would I were John the merchant's man now?
Oh, heavens, almost unheard of villainy. Thou hast done a crime so great that there is hardly mercy enough in heaven to pardon thee. Tell me, for now I'll argue mildly with thee, why should you seek to undo a harmless maid, to rob her of her friends, her life, perhaps? Oh, for I'm sure her shame, which is more dearer to her, 'twas an inhuman act, an act so barbarous that nations uncivilized would abhor it. I dare say body she ne'er injured you. She was as gentle as the breath of Zephyrus, and if she did but begin a thought of wronging any man, she would have wept before she thought it out.
I had rather be a pickled oyster than in this case I am in now.
Oh, is Lucia abused? And I stand here to expostulate with words her injuries. Draw, for I'll talk no more with thee.
Do you hear, sir? By heaven, I lay with her, but we were contracted first. Will you be pleased to hear me?
No. Be gone.
Most willingly. Fare you well heartily, sir. I wish you a good nightcap.
Exit Puny.
The want of sleep and diet has distempered me. If I stay thus, I shall be quite distracted. Methinks a kind of strangeness seizes me, and yet if I go home, I shall be forced to marry with Aurelia. Is it possible there should be women good, if Lucia be not? They are not sure. She looked as well as any, and spoke as well too.
Enter old Truman and Blade in Act 4, Scene 5. Old Truman currently muted.
So sorry. I tell you, Captain, he's a stubborn boy, a self-willed harebrained boy. He has his no-nots and his would-nots and his maybes when I speak. I have told him of his manner 100 times, nay, I may say 1,000.
Pray take my counsel for this once. Though I be a soldier, love not to do all things by force. Speak fairly to.
Speak fairly to my son. I'll see him buried. I'll see you, his eyes out first.
I mean, desire him.
Oh, that's another matter. Well, for your persuasion, I'll do it. But if ever I speak fair to him...
I know his nature's such that kindness will sooner win him. Look you, he's here of faith, as melancholy as an owl in the daytime.
Oh, are you there, Jack Sauce?
Nay, remember what I told you?
'Tis true indeed. How now, son Dick? You're melancholy still, I see.
It best becomes my fortune, sir, now you have cast me off.
I cast thee off? Marry, God forbid, Dick. How dost do, Dick? Thou look'st ill, Dick. In troth thou dost. I must have thee merry.
I see all kindness is against this dotard's nature. He doth so overact it.
Wilt thou have a physician, Dick? Thou art my only son, Dick, and I must have a care of thee. Thou shouldst ride abroad sometimes, Dick, and be merry. We'll have a wife too for thee, Dick. A good wife, huh?
Thank you, sir, but I know not.
Aye. Now he's at his no-nots. I will make you leave those no-nots, boy.
Master Truman, what I told you?
'Tis true indeed. Your father's old now, Dick, you see, and would fain see a grandchild. 'Tis out of love of you, Dick, that I persuade you to it. You may be a comfort, Dick, to your father now.
You may command me.
Well said, Dick. I see thou lovest me now, Dick. Dost thou want any money, Dick? Or clothes? Or horses? You should tell me what you want. You shall have everything. Here's the captain, a hearty friend of yours. Where's your daughter, Captain? There's a wench, Dick. Have you seen her?
Yes, sir.
And how do you like her, Dick? Speak freely.
I know no cause why any should dislike her.
Why, well said, Dick. Keep thee of that mind still, and God will bless thee.
Your father means, Master Truman, I suppose, how you like her for a wife.
I can tell my own meaning myself, I hope. I'm old enough, I'm sure.
You wrong her much. I never shall deserve her. Alas, I am a man so weak in all things, so lost both to the world and to myself, that if I loved a woman heartily, and wooed her with all zealous passions, and valued her love above all things else but heaven, yet when I thought upon my own unworthiness, I should myself persuade her not to marry me.
Well, sir, if you esteem her worth your choice, she shall be yours.
Why, what should air him, Captain? He esteem her. Must he, forsooth, or I be master, pray? Captain Blade, you make him too saucy with such talk. Never tell me, Captain Blade. I say it makes him too saucy. Ay, marry, it does it. It does, i'faith. Must he be his own carver? Come, no more words. I'll have you married presently. I'faith, Lord Captain, you make him too saucy, you do. You do, i'faith, sir. I can't abide when sons must come to esteem. He esteem her with a vengeance.
I desire time only to consider.
Aye. Why, I told you this. 'Tis such another wilful, harebrained coxcomb. He's always considering. Captain Blade, I could never help him from his considering, but I shall so consider you. Go, get you in, sir. I'll have it done when I please. Get you in, sir. I'll keep you from considering hereafter.
And they exit. If only Dick would listen. Dick. I mean, not necessarily the effect they were aiming for in the early modern period, but I did find that scene particularly enjoyable. Just
Sorry.
quite so many dicks bobbing about there. Which made, which is, you know, it's an effective little scene in its own right. It sort of works in its that sense of, you know, remain calm, talk to speak fair to your son. I'm not going to speak fair to my son ever. No, that's not what we do in this household. And we have that fascinating little scene with Puny and young Truman. I mean, it's not exactly what it means, but the way that Puny's defense kept coming across, it just kept reminding me of just, we were on a break. It was just sort of the way it came. It's not literally what it meant, but it was quite interesting the way that flowed. So yeah, thoughts from this place midway through Act 4. We have time to squeeze in another scene, actually, if people would like to rattle on. I'll just double check where they're there. But any thoughts while I just quickly look at that as an option? No, nobody's got any thoughts.
No, I mean, so what I was going to say is a bit like what I said before, which is that everybody but Lucia comes across as such an idiot that it's hard for me and so unpleasant some of them are just unpleasant. Some of them are idiots. That it's hard for me to believe that the play's sexual politics are as dire as those of the characters.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Shall we just dive into just squeeze another? It's a long play, so I'm quite keen to always get a little ahead if we can. Act 4, Scene 6 then. Enter Aurelia. Lucia finally is disguised.
What did you say your name was?
Jane, forsooth.
Well said, Jane. And as I told you, Jane, you shall have £6 a year, Jane, for your wages, and then my clothes will serve you with a little alteration. There's a gown of my cousin's within will almost fit you. You're much about her height. You shall have that too. I had a cousin here, was a foolish thing, God wot. 'Tis well I am rid of her. And d'ye hear? You must be very secret and faithful to your mistress. A waiting woman's place is a place require secrecy.
I shall ill deserve your favour else.
Nay, I dare trust thee, Jane. Thou look'st ingenuously. Didst thou ever live at court?
No, forsooth.
Oh, you must learn the fashions of the court. I'm already contracted to one Master Puny, though he little thinks of it. Take heed of speaking, Jane. You see, I trust you. And when I'm married to him, I'll live at court. He's a simple thing, God knows, but I'll have him knighted, and I like him the better for it. A wise woman, you know, will make the best use of a foolish husband. You know how to dress me, Jane, in the court fashion?
Yes, forsooth.
And you can lay me on a fucus handsomely?
Oh, I hope I shall quickly learn it.
And when you see a friend with me, or so that I would be private with, you can stay in the next room and see that nobody come in to interrupt us.
I shall not be deficient in my duty.
Well said. And can you tell in private such a gentleman that you heard me speak in commendation of him, and that I dreamt of him last night? That will be in your way, Jane. Such men will be grateful, and say that I was longing t'other day for such a jewel or such a toy.
Lucia makes a curtsy.
I hope you shall not find me wanting in any service to you.
I believe thee, Jane. Tomorrow I'll teach thee more. I shall read to you every day a lesson, till I see you perfect in the science. 'Tis requisite that you have a little of the theory first. Go look at the pearl chain in the cabinet within, and stay till I come to you.
Exit Lucia, disguised as Jane.
The wench, I see, is docile, and will learn. But alas, she must have time. She has a little too much city breeding, I see, by curtsies and forsooths.
Act 4, Scene 7. Enter to Aurelia. Blade.
Now, all alone, Aurelia. You're eating soap and ashes here, I warrant you, without so much as saying grace for 'em.
I'd rather repent in ashes, sir, than eat 'em.
What would you think if I should marry now this very day?
I should think, sir, you'd repent tomorrow for it.
And the widow, too.
The widow? Then you'll repent tonight, sir, I believe.
I wooed her long ago, and now she sees there's an estate fallen to me. But she's content. And to save charges, is willing to be married today, privately.
Oh, but I hope you are not so, sir. Why, we shall have all the silenced ministers humming and hawing thrice a week here. Not a dish of meat, but will be longer a blessing than a roasting. I shall never hear my virginals when I play upon 'em for her daughter Tabitha's singing of psalms. The first pious deed will be to banish Shakespeare and Ben Jonson out of the parlour, and to bring in their rooms Ma Prelate and Prynne's works. Ugh, you'll never endure it, sir. You will want to have a sermon once a quarter at a good time. You shall have 10 a day now.
Let me alone to deal with them. If any of her eating, talking tribe show their ears here, I will so use her tribe that they shall free the Pope and call me Antichrist hereafter. And the widow, I'll warrant you, I'll convert. I'll carry her to plays instead of lectures. She shall see them, as well as the dancing of the ropes and the puppet play of Nineveh. But this is not my business, girl. I have an husband for you, too.
I could wish you would keep him, sir, if you have him. I know not what to do with him myself.
Come, 'tis a man you'll like, I'm sure. I've heard you often commend him for his parts. 'Tis young Master Truman.
Truman, sir? The melancholy cross-armed gentleman that talks to trees and rivers as he goes by 'em? We should sit all day together like pictures of man and wife, with our faces towards one another, and never speak, I'll undertake, upon our marriage night. He'll only sigh a little, cry, cruel fate, and then go to sleep.
Never fear it. Come, thou shalt have him, girl. Go quickly and dress yourself. We'll both be married on a day. The humour is good, and it saves charges. There's the widow's humour, too.
You'll give me leave, sir?
No. Prithee, go dress thyself. My heaven, it must be as I say. The fates have ordained it.
Oh, be pleased to hear me, sir.
I would not hear thee, though thou wert an angel. I'm as resolute as he that resolves. Come away and adorn thyself.
And they exit. And I'm going to have to upgrade. When the plays do this, I'm going to have to go for a goose. That alleges to be a goose caller, by the way. I'm very disappointed with my investment. Anyway, okay, lots of interesting things here. Aurelia at home, Lucia coming in, and a really interesting little scene there. Again, we did Aurelia's good value for money. I'm wishing there was a bit more Aurelia, actually. There's a lot of interesting, and her relationship with her father, which actually hasn't been really explored very much. To actually, hear them badinage and back and forth, especially about the repenting of marriage. Conflict. You'll repent it tomorrow. You'll repent it tonight. That's a really. And actually, just that impression. I'm sure it was there in the play, but I hadn't actually really got across. It hadn't come across to me that that the widow and Tabitha were particularly pious. I'm not saying it wasn't there. I just missed it. It just went shumph past me. But that's just because I'm usually busy doing about 3 things at once. So I often miss these minor details that are probably explicated at great length. I just found them a bit boring. That's probably why I didn't listen. So they weren't saying dick a lot, so I didn't pay attention. Thoughts of the room before I go into final thoughts. Effective little scene, moving stuff forward, some wit in there. And again, you'll have to marry Truman. Oh, him. Oh, well. If you insist. Okay. Well, we're 2/3 of the way through. There are. I think we've already established that the text needs some filleting, in the sense that there's an awful lot from the period that is a little too impenetrable. But when he's on form, he writes some really, really good lines of dialogue. But now as we get further into it, and we actually have the plot sort of unfolding, because we actually had very little plot the first session, it is that question of balancing the comedy with the drama. You know, there is a very serious drama at the centre of this, about, you know, the way Lucia is being treated by these not very desperately nice people, and there is the problem at this point that the drama may kill off getting any laughs because it gets quite serious. The question is, will the play be able to? Having a dark patch in the middle of a play is kind of fine. That's allowed. You can have ebbs and flows. Will it be able to stick the landing and pull off a resolution? Who's gonna? You know, I can just about turn around young Truman to marry Lucia in the end. I mean, he's an idiot, but he's not full of malice in the way that Puny or the others are quite so put out there. But then who marries whom, and how does the rest of it? What happens to Aurelia? You know, where does I'm assuming Aurelia ends up with Puny? But
Yeah.
so yeah, there's all sorts of unresolved issues that the play then sort of throws up in the air. You know, in terms of hopefully Blade ends up penniless and ends up not, and the other Blades live on their debts. But you know, I kind of would like them to get banished or something slightly more permanent, extricating them from the universe. So final thoughts in the room. Not quite as fun as yesterday, I feel. That's, I think, a fair one. I'll start with Sarah, who was here yesterday. We're a fair mix as well of people who don't quite know where we are. Yeah, Sarah, any final thoughts?
Yeah, definitely not as much fun as yesterday. Yesterday, although the wastrel chaps were fairly reprehensible, there was the thing about the first third of the play was it sparkled. You know, the dialogue was just fantastic, and so even though they were kind of reprehensible, it just skipped along so brilliantly, and the back and forth was so funny that you didn't really mind it. Well, no, what I said yesterday was I won't mind it, assuming that, you know, they all get their comeuppance, which is kind of what you have just said and what Aliki said earlier as well. Today, I don't know. There have been some brilliant lines in this, no doubt. There have just been some wonderful phrases, but it hasn't sparkled for me in the same way. And I think that's partly because there is just too much young Truman. It's like, I still... Yeah, he's not quite as awful as the rest of the men, but that is not saying much, frankly. He's pretty grim, and it's almost like, you know, we have Dogrel who keeps coming. Actually, that's the other thing. Dogrel did not come out with much Dogrel today, which was a little bit disappointing considering he was in it so much. We you know, that we had a little bit, but not much at all. But like, young Truman is just coming out with all this crap basically, and I just wanted to slap him. Really, and there was just, for me, a little bit too much of that plot line. And then when we did cut back to the rapscallions, they were just being so horrible. I mean, they were kind of being awful yesterday, but it was funny awful, whereas today it was just grim, I thought. And also, like, there were other various plots that just seemed to have disappeared. And, you know, it's fine, you know, because it weaving, you know, different plots through different scenes. But, like, we've done a whole chunk today, and what's happened to the plot where, you know, Cutter was pretending to be a Puritan to woo Tabitha? Because I was playing Cutter yesterday, and I remember that happening quite clearly, and it's just disappeared. So it's become a little bit more uneven, and I have not enjoyed it so much today. I do think that a lot of the characters continue to be really good value. You know, Aurelia's really good value. Puny's really good value as well. They're just so awful, all these people, but they have great lines occasionally. But I'm just, I was super enthusiastic yesterday. Now to me it feels like it's settling very much into the sort of pattern of an early modern comedy. So I'm a little less enthusiastic, but who knows? I might be turning it round and changing my mind again tomorrow.
I mean, the thing is, it is so easy, especially, a relatively young writer, it is so easy to write horrible things for people to say. It is a genuine, entertainingly awful things. And the thing is, after about 2 hours of that, and this is about 2 hours of play that we've covered here, it's a long play. After 2 hours of that, it wears thin, and this was sort of what I was hinting at yesterday, is that there's too much stuff. And then once you actually add what we will call drama to a comedy, before there was nothing really at stake. Today we started to have stakes, and then people are still being horrible, and they're still sort of being really well written horrible, and still, but now there are stakes, and therefore it lands in a different way. So, when Puny says, "I scaled the walls, entered the town, and left a garrison there," it's a great line. But in the context of the scene, there's something really horrible happening there, and that's no longer as fun. Though I say, a very interesting dialogue is still happening. It's within the matrix of everything else. Olga, you were not here yesterday, so you are a little possibly lost in the woods. Any final thoughts?
A little bit, yes. It's always great fun to be thrown into the midst of the unfamiliar play. But yeah, I totally get what you are saying about the play is slightly unbalanced, I would say. It is a typical early modern comedy on one hand, and there are things that are awful things beautifully written. What I feel there is, as you mentioned, like adding the drama and raising stakes. But I see the danger of losing the dramatic part of it under all this comic stuff that is happening, because it would be so easy to overplay and overdo all this comical stuff and just have great fun, totally missing that these things are pretty awful and that something nasty is being done to someone. It's quite possible to just overlook it, particularly for the audience who is not very deeply into it, because there's so much happening. So many plots and subplots intertwined and partly lost, as I now discover. And then something new is appearing, and you are basically trying to make this ends meet and keep the track of things. Where is it going to lead? You never know. So I feel like it can be hilarious, but not in a good way, because it's, why are we telling this story? That this question is sort of hanging there yet with no resolution.
Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to forestall talking about content until we finish this. I'll reserve judgment on why are we telling the story. Very good question. But I will talk a little bit about structure, because this play is kind of oddly structured. But if indeed Aurelia seduced or bed tricked Puny and is going to force him to marry her later, we don't know that for sure. That should have been something the audience was let in on. So that's a structural thing that I feel like is a myth. And the late onset disguising is also weird. I mean, we expect the disguise to happen like basically as one of the early plot points rather than this late in the narrative. So the shape of it is kind of weird. So what I'm thinking now is if you were going to do this, you want to cut the first 3 acts as heavily as you can to sort of move that disguising twist up earlier in the overall narrative, and I think that shape would feel more recognizable and more satisfying.
Oddly enough, I entirely disagree. But that is fine because it's interesting. We had this with Game at Chess of this sudden shift towards the sort of midpoint in the play where you're thinking this doesn't make any sense. And you look at it in that sense. But in terms of the flow of the action, it sort of works. I think the flow of this, actually and structurally, it's kind of fine. The problem is that there's just too many words in it, and I don't have necessarily a problem with that slight disappearing cutter subplot, so long as it's picked up again later, because that's not unusual either. That one subplot gets dropped for the middle third of the play, and that's usually a doubling reason. I suspect that Tabitha is just not available because they're doing something else. That may not be the case for this kind of drama. So I don't think those are insuperable problems. I think structurally the flow of the action makes sense. And also it has a natural interval point, actually. The disguise is introduced after where we would put an interval. It's almost the opening gambit. And that feels actually quite natural in that sense. But of course, we wouldn't know that until we do it in action, which of course I could be horribly wrong and Lynn could be horribly right. And that's one of those questions that actually doing a play without stopping and starting answers the question. Who wasn't here before? Aliki, you were not here last time, so any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that bit about people being awful polling eventually, because I was starting to feel bad about how much I was enjoying them being awful and witty. But that lets me off the hook ethically. I'm just curious to see how it'll all wrap up, really.
Yeah. Mark, you also, this is your first time. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think what I kind of focused in on was partly just Puny's character since I was reading it, and it was very clear to me what was going on with him. But it was partly related to that, but also to young Truman. The way that people remark upon how certain characters go about speaking and being, I think is interesting, and it gives something for that actor to play with, and it gives us something they have to play with, because it's like this only works. People keep talking about how Puny makes all these comparisons. People talk about how young Truman talks to trees and rivers as he goes by them, and how if Aurelia married him, then on their marriage night he'd only sigh a little, cry cruel fate, and then go to sleep. It puts an interesting kind of challenge that the actors have to rise to be able to make that work. And I think especially all the like comparisons and metaphors that people say that Puny says, it's like, especially with, rhetorical thoughts being different today than then. I feel like it's definitely playable, but something you need to play well for that to read and to work. And it was fun. It was fun to read. Puny was fun to read today. And yes, horrible. But I did not read the first third, so it hadn't already been wearing on me. So I think Aliki may have been saying similar, that it's like, oh yeah, it's fun. But it'll be interesting for me to read the final part of it and see how my feelings emerge as I get more into this play.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing this play is absolutely. I mean, he's playable. I mean, everybody's got a clear idea who their part is. Actually, I'm not wholly sure who Puny actually is, but I think there are answers there. But I think pretty much everybody else. I mean, it's like before we started, Aliki said, who's Cutter? And it was Braggart Soldier. Off you go. And that's. I mean, there's a little other stuff going on there. And the Aurelia and Lucia are interesting characters. Actually, there's something interesting going there. Whether they're consistent characters is another question. Susan, any final thoughts?
But yes, I mean, I'm thinking about the audience, because it has got complicated. And I just think so much is in the playing. It seems to require you to absolutely pick up cues. Mark, you were absolutely spot on that. It's not got longers, and there's plenty of wit, but it's got to be speedy, pick up cues, no longers. and then it comes alive. Really, some plays just it is essential to do that, and this one seems to have that quality. Just
Alan.
as an actor.
Yeah. Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're possibly, those of us who were here yesterday as well, were spoiled because the opening of it is so bouncy and active. And then this session that we've done today does seem to have dragged by comparison. There are bits which, had you not had that sort of starburst opening, would probably have not felt quite as down as they did to me. And it'll be very interesting to see how these various plot lines are resolved, as whether there's any bits one can excise to actually improve the flow of it.
So we have one more session, and well, as with comedies, it's a higher probability of the curse of the final session really coming in and making us all feel sad and depressed after having lots of fun. But you never know. There's still time for things to go in a more upward trajectory. All that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. How do you like her, Dick?